Chapter 1. The Wedding That Never Was. The sun hung low over the sprawling estate of Ashwood Manor, casting golden rays across the manicured lawns and the white marquee tent fluttering in the breeze. It was to be the wedding of the season. Miss Desirvares, Elellanena Grayson, the radiant heiress of a shipping fortune, was set to marry Lord Rupert Ashwood, a dashing nobleman with a smile that could charm the stars. The guest list glittered with society's finest, and among them sat Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his impeccable moustache and a twinkle of curiosity in his sharp green eyes. Poirot had been invited as a courtesy by Eleanor's uncle, Sir Harold Grayson, a jovial man who had once benefited from Poirot's knack for untangling a minor scandal involving a stolen sapphire. "A wedding, mon ami," Sir Harold had boomed over the telephone, "is a celebration of order and harmony. Your kind of affair, eh, Poirot?" Poirot, ever the observer of human nature, had accepted, intrigued by the promise of elegance and, perhaps, a puzzle. The ceremony was to begin at precisely 4 o'clock. The guests, adorned in silks and top hats, murmured with anticipation as the string quartet played a lilting melody. Poirot adjusted his bow tie and surveyed the scene. The nervous groom at the altar, the proud father of the bride pacing near the tent's entrance, and the bridesmaids whispering behind their bouquets. Yet, as the clock struck 4, a ripple of unease passed through the crowd. The bride was nowhere to be seen. Minutes ticked by. The murmurs grew louder. Lord Rupert's smile faltered, and Sir Harold's face reddened as he dispatched a footman to fetch Eleanor from the manor. Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on his silver-tipped cane, his mind already stirring. The little grey cells, they sense something amiss, he muttered to himself. The footman returned, pale and breathless. "She's gone, sir. Miss Eleanor. Her room's empty and the windows wide open." A gasp swept through the guests. Sir Harold clutched his chest, barking orders to search the grounds. Lord Rupert sank onto a chair, his hands trembling. Poirot rose, his calm demeanour a stark contrast to the chaos. "Monsieur," he said, approaching Sir Harold, "permit me, Hercule Poirot, to assist. A bride does not vanish into thin air, without reason." Sir Harold nodded, too flustered to argue. Poirot made his way to Eleanor's room, his polished shoes clicking against the manor's marble floors. The chamber was a vision of bridal splendour. A white gown draped over a chaise, a bouquet of lilies on the vanity, and a long gossamer veil trailing across the floor. The window, as reported, yawned open, its curtains fluttering like ghosts. Poirot knelt by the veil, his gloved fingers brushing its edge. "Curious," he murmured. A faint scent of lavender clung to the fabric, not the bride's perfume, he noted, for her bottle of rosewater sat untouched on the dresser. Then, beneath the veil, he spied a scrap of paper, crumpled and half-hidden. He unfolded it with care, revealing a single line scrawled in haste. "The truth lies beyond the roses." Poirot's moustache twitched upward. A riddle, perhaps, or a cry for help. He straightened, his eyes gleaming. The wedding had become a mystery, and Hercule Poirot was in his element. Outside, the guests buzzed with speculation. Abduction, cold feet, a lover's quarrel. Poirot, however, saw only the threads of a tapestry yet to be woven. The little grey cells, they must work quickly, he said aloud. stepping back into the fading light. For where there is a vanishing bride, there is a story, and perhaps a killer. Chapter 2. The Shadow of the Veil. The air in Ashwood Manor thickened with tension as dusk crept over the estate, painting the sky in hues of violet and amber. Hercule Poirot stood in Elellanena Grayson's bridal chamber, the cryptic note, "The truth lies beyond the roses," still clutched in his gloved hand. The room, once a sanctuary of anticipation, now felt like a stage abandoned mid-performance. He turned his attention to the open window, its frame unmarred by scratches or signs of force. A voluntary exit, perhaps, he mused, his moustache quivering slightly. Or a clever illusion? Downstairs, the wedding guests had been herded into the grand drawing-room, their finery now crumpled with worry. Sir Harold Grayson paced before the fireplace, his voice a thunderclap. "This is an outrage! My niece, gone on her wedding day! Someone must know something!" Lord Rupert Ashwood, the forsaken groom, sat slumped in an armchair, a glass of brandy untouched in his hand. "She was radiant this morning," he murmured, his voice hollow. "We spoke of our future. How could she simply vanish?" Poirot entered the room, his diminutive figure commanding attention despite the chaos. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his accent crisp, "I, Hercule Poirot, have commenced the investigation. The disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor is no mere caprice. There is method here, purpose. I require your cooperation." A ripple of murmurs followed, but none dared interrupt. Poirot held up the note, its jagged script catching the firelight. "This was found beneath the bride's veil. The truth lies beyond the roses. Does this mean anything to any of you?" Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the hearth. Then a voice, soft, hesitant, rose from the corner. "The rose garden," said Clara Grayson, Eleanor's younger cousin, her wide eyes framed by auburn curls. "It's beyond the west wing. Eleanor loved it there, said it was her refuge." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Merci, mademoiselle. A refuge, you say? Perhaps it holds more than flowers." He turned to Sir Harold. "Monsieur, I must see this garden at once." The rose garden was a labyrinth of blooming splendour, its thorny vines weaving a fragrant maze under the twilight sky. Poirot moved with purpose, his cane tapping the stone path as Clara and a reluctant Sir Harold trailed behind. The scent of roses mingled with the lingering lavender Poirot had noted on the veil. A clue, he suspected, that tethered the scene above to this one below. Near the garden's heart, a marble bench sat beneath an arch of crimson blooms. Poirot paused, his eyes narrowing. The earth beside the bench was disturbed, a faint indentation marking where something or someone had stood. He knelt, his fingers brushing the soil, and unearthed a single pearl earring, its lustre dulled by dirt. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "this belonged to the bride, no?" Clara gasped, clutching her shawl. "Yes, she wore those this morning. I helped her dress." Sister Harold's face darkened. "What does it mean, Poirot? Is she hurt?" Poirot rose, pocketing the earring. "It means, monsieur, that Mademoiselle Eleanor was here, or someone wishes us to believe she was. The veil, the note, the earring, they are breadcrumbs in a trail of deception." He tapped his temple. "The little grey cells, they begin to see a pattern. As they returned to the manor, a figure emerged from the shadows near the gardens. Edge, Mrs. Beatrice Langston, the housekeeper, her stern face etched with unease. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "I heard something this afternoon before the ceremony. A quarrel, Miss Eleanor and Lord Rupert in the library." Poirot's head tilted. "A quarrel, you say? And what was its nature?" "Was upset," Beatrice replied, wringing her hands. "Said something about promises broken." He tried to calm her, but she stormed off. "Most interesting," Poirot said, his eyes glinting. "A lover's spat? Or a fracture deeper still? Merci, madam. You have given me much to ponder." Back in the drawing-room, Poirot faced the assembled guests, the note and earring now twin enigmas in his grasp. The veil's shadow stretched, beyond the roses he knew, into the hearts of those gathered. "Someone here," he declared softly, "knows more than they admit, and Hercule Poirot will uncover it." Chapter 3. Suspects in silk and satin, the grand drawing-room of Ashwood. Manor buzzed with a nervous energy as Hercule Poirot stood before the wedding guests, his small frame radiating authority. The firelight danced across his polished shoes and the sharp lines of his moustache, which twitched as he surveyed the faces before him. Each guest, draped in silk and satin, wore a mask of concern, or perhaps guilt. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, the pearl earring and cryptic note now safely tucked in his pocket, and began. "Messieurs et mesdames," he said, his voice steady, "the disappearance of Mademoiselle Eleanor Grayson is no accident. It is a puzzle, and you, each of you, are pieces within it. I shall speak with you one by one, for the truth, it hides in the details." First, he approached Lord Rupert Ashwood, the groom, who still clutched his untouched brandy. The young nobleman's dark hair was dishevelled, his blue eyes clouded with distress. "Monsieur," Poirot began, "Madame Langston, the housekeeper, has informed me of a quarrel between you and the bride this afternoon. What promises, pray, tell were broken?" Rupert flinched, his glass trembling. "It was nothing, Monsieur Poirot. A trifling disagreement. Eleanor, she was anxious, that's all. She asked if I'd kept my word about a private matter. I assured her I had, but she wouldn't listen." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A private matter, you say? And yet she fled, or was taken. Be precise, monsieur. What was this promise?" Rupert hesitated, then muttered, "She wanted me to cut ties with an old friend, a lady friend. I swore I had, and I did. Eleanor misunderstood." "Misunderstood?" Poirot echoed, his tone dry. "Or perhaps mistrusted. Merci, Lord Rupert. For now, that is sufficient." Next, Poirot turned to Clara Grayson, Eleanor's cousin, who fidgeted with the hem of her pale pink gown. "Mademoiselle, Clara," he said gently, "you knew of the rose garden's significance to your cousin. Tell me, was she herself this morning, or did you sense something amiss?" Clara bit her lip, her voice a whisper. "She was quiet, more than usual. When I helped her with her earrings, she kept staring out of the window, like she was waiting for something. I thought it was just nerves." Poirot tilted his head. "Waiting, you say? Interesting. And did she speak of anyone? Of fears, perhaps?" "No," Clara replied, then paused. "Well, she did mention Uncle Harold once. Said he'd been too generous lately. I didn't understand. Too generous, Poirot repeated, filing the remark away. Merci, mademoiselle. He beauty moved on to Sir Harold Grayson, whose florid face glistened with sweat. Monsieur, Poirot said, your niece vanishes on the day of her triumph, leaving a note and an earring as clues. What do you make of this truth beyond the roses? Sir, Harold puffed out his chest. I've no blasted idea, Poirot. Eleanor was happy, thrilled to marry Rupert. This is some mad prank or foul play. I've given her everything, wealth, a future. Why would she run? Poirot's moustache quirked. Everything, monsieur? Even perhaps too much? Your generosity, it seems, weighed on her mind. Sir Harold sputtered, but Poirot waved a hand dismissively and turned to the final figure of note, Lady Margaret Ashwood, Rupert's widowed mother, a regal woman in black velvet whose icy composure hadn't cracked. Madame, Poirot said, you have been silent. What are your thoughts on this calamity? Lady Margaret's lips thinned. Eleanor was a charming girl, but fragile. I warned Rupert she might not withstand the pressures of our family. Perhaps she fled to spare us all. Fragile, Poirot mused, or perceptive. Did you approve of this union, madam? Her gaze was steel. It was acceptable. Rupert's happiness mattered more. Poirot nodded, stepping back to address the room. Each of you has offered a thread. Love, doubt, generosity, fragility. Yet the tapestry remains incomplete. I ask you now to remain here while I examine further. The little grey cells, they demand more. As the guests murmured, Poirot slipped away, his mind racing. Rupert's evasiveness, Clara's observation, Sir Harold's bluster, Lady Margaret's chill, all were pieces. But the veil's lavender scent and the earring in the rose garden gnawed at him. Someone, he knew, was weaving a lie. And he would unravel it. Outside the night deepened, and a faint cry echoed from the manor's upper floors. A sound too brief to place, but enough to set Poirot's pulse quickening. The game, it advances, he whispered, heading toward the stairs. Chapter 4. The Locked Room Riddle. The echo of that fleeting cry lingered in Hercule Poirot's mind as he ascended the grand staircase of Ashwood Manor, his cane tapping a steady rhythm against the polished wood. The upper floors were a maze of corridors, their walls adorned with portraits of stern Ashwood ancestors gazing down in silent judgment. The guests remained below, their voices a distant hum. But Poirot's focus was singular, the source of that sound, and the secrets it might unveil. He paused at the landing, his sharp ears straining. Silence now reigned, but his intuition, the little grey cells, urged him onward. He recalled the layout Sir Harold had boasted of during a prior visit. Guest rooms to the left, family quarters to the right, and at the corridor's end, a small study Eleanor had claimed as her own. A place of solitude, Sir Harold had called it. Poirot made for it, the lavender scent from the veil still a ghostly companion in his memory. The study door was unremarkable, oak, sturdy, with a brass knob, but it was locked. Yook's moustache twitched. Curious, he murmured, producing a small leather pouch from his coat. From it he extracted a set of delicate tools, a gift from a locksmith friend in Brussels. The art of the lock, it is not so different from the art of the mind, he said, deftly working the mechanism. With a soft click, the door yielded. Inside, the room was a shrine to Elellanena Grayson. A desk bore stacks of letters tied with ribbon, a vase of wilting roses sat by the window, and a phonograph rested in the corner, its needle poised over a record. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and something sweeter. Lavender again. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The veil, it connects to this place. He approached the desk, sifting through the letters. Most were innocuous, notes from friends, wedding RSVPs, but one, tucked beneath the pile, caught his eye. The paper was creased, the ink smudged, as if handled in haste. It read, "Eleanor, you mustn't trust him. The roses hide more than you know. Meet me tonight, L." L, Poirot mused. Lord Rupert, or another. He pocketed the letter, his mind racing. The note's tone suggested urgency, betrayal, yet it bore no date. Was it old or tied to this very day? His gaze shifted to the phonograph. A hunch stirred him, and he wound the crank, setting the needle to play. The room filled with a crackling melody, a waltz, followed by a voice, faint but unmistakable. "Eleanor's. I can't do this," she said, her words trembling. "He's lying, I know it. The roses, they'll tell me." The recording cut off abruptly, leaving only the hiss of the needle. Poirot froze, his fingers tightening on his cane. Mon Dieu, she knew something, or suspected it. But who is he? The locked door, the recording, the letter. They painted a picture of a bride unravelling a secret, one that perhaps led to her vanishing. He turned to the window, which overlooked the rose garden below. The glass was intact, the latch secure, no sign of escape here. Yet as he leaned closer, a glint caught his eye. A single thread of white silk snagged on the sill. He plucked it free, holding it to the light. "The veil," he whispered, "or part of it." A sudden knock jolted him from his thoughts. The door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Beatrice Langston, the housekeeper, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, breathless, "you must come quickly. They've found something in the cellar." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "What, madame?" "A shoe," she replied, her voice quavering. "One of Miss Eleanor's slippers, covered in mud. Lead on," Poirot said, his calm masking the storm within. The locked room had offered a riddle, but the cellar promised an answer, or another layer of deception. As he followed Beatrice, the thread of silk burned in his pocket, a fragile link to the vanishing bride. Chapter 5. Whispers in the Dark. The cellar of Ashwood Manor was a cavernous labyrinth, its stone walls slick with damp, and its air thick with the musty scent of age. Hercule Poirot descended the narrow stairs behind Mrs. Beatrice Langston, the housekeeper's lantern casting jittery shadows that danced like spectres. The faint hum of the wedding guests above faded, replaced by the drip of water somewhere in the gloom. Poirot's polished shoes clicked against the uneven floor, a stark contrast to the eerie stillness. Beatrice halted near a stack of wine barrels, her lantern illuminating a small mud-caked object on the ground. A delicate white slipper, its satin ribbon torn. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over it. "Mademoiselle Eleanor's, you say?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chill creeping up his spine. "Yes." Beatrice whispered, clutching her apron. "She wore them this morning. I saw her myself. How it got here so filthy. It's unnatural." Poirot examined the slipper closely. The mud was fresh, streaked with bits of grass, and a faint trace of lavender clung to it. Yet another echo of the veil. "Unnatural, perhaps," he said, "or deliberate. This was placed here, madam, to be found." He rose, his green eyes glinting in the lantern's glow. "Who discovered it?" "One of the footmen." "Thomas," Beatrice replied. "He was fetching wine for the guests when he stumbled over it." "Summon him," Poirot instructed, "and tell no one else. Not yet." As Beatrice hurried off, Poirot paced the cellar, his mind a whirl of threads. The locked study, the recording of Eleanor's fear, the silk thread on the sill, and now this slipper. "The little grey cells, they protest," he muttered. "Too many clues, yet no pattern, unless—" He paused, his gaze settling on a shadowed corner where the barrels parted. A faint scuff mark marred the floor, leading to a narrow wooden door, its hinges rusted but intact. Before he could investigate, footsteps echoed behind him. Thomas, a lanky young footman with nervous hands, appeared beside Beatrice. "Monsieur Poirot," he stammered, "I swear, I just saw it there, by the barrels. I didn't touch it." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Calm yourself, monsieur. Tell me, did you hear anything, see anyone, before this discovery?" Thomas hesitated, then nodded. I thought I heard a noise, sir, like a whisper or a shuffle from over there." He pointed towards the wooden door. Poirot's pulse quickened. "Merci, Thomas. You have been most helpful." He turned to Beatrice. "Madame, remain here with the slipper. I must see what lies beyond." The door creaked as Poirot pushed it open, revealing a cramped passage lined with cobwebs. The air grew colder, and the lavender scent intensified, mingling with something sharper, metallic like rust or blood. At the passage's end, a trap-door loomed, its edges worn but sealed tight. Poirot tugged at it, but it held fast. "Locked or barred from below," he murmured. "A secret way, perhaps." A sudden sound, a muffled thud, came from beneath the trap-door, faint but unmistakable. Poirot froze, his hand tightening on his cane. "Someone is there," he whispered. He rapped sharply on the wood, calling, "Mademoiselle Eleanor?" "It is I, Hercule Poirot. Are you within?" Silence answered, thick and oppressive. Then a whisper, so soft it might have been the wind, drifted up. "Help!" Poirot's heart leapt. "Mon Dieu!" He spun to Beatrice and Thomas, who had followed, despite his orders. "Fetch Sir Harold and Lord Rupert, at once, and tools, a crowbar, anything to open this." As they scrambled away, Poirot pressed his ear to the trapdoor, straining to hear more. The whisper faded, leaving only the drip of water and his racing thoughts. Was it Eleanor, trapped or hidden, or a lure set by a cunning hand? The slipper, the passage, the voice. They wove a web, and Poirot stood at its edge, poised to plunge deeper. Above, the manor stirred with shouts as help was summoned. Below, the dark held its secrets close. "The truth," Poirot said softly. "It lies not just beyond the roses, but beneath them." Chapter 6. The Bride's Lost Voice. The cellar of Ashwood Manor buzzed with urgency as Sir Harold Grayson and Lord Rupert Ashwood descended the stairs, their faces etched with a mix of dread and disbelief. Behind them, Thomas the footman carried a heavy crowbar, his hands trembling. Hercule Poirot stood by the trapdoor, his small frame taut with anticipation, the faint whisper, "Help!" still echoing in his mind. The air was thick with dust and the sharp tang of lavender, a scent that had become the thread binding this enigma. "Poirot, what the devil is this?" Sir Harold bellowed, his voice reverberating off the stone walls. "A trapdoor? Eleanor, down there?" "Perhaps, monsieur," Poirot replied, his tone calm but firm. A voice, faint and pleading, came from below. "We must open it, now!" Rupert stepped forward, his eyes wild. "If she's there, we've wasted too much time already. Thomas, give me that." He snatched the crowbar and wedged it beneath the trapdoor's edge, heaving with desperate strength. The wood groaned, nails popping free until the door sprang, open with a splintering crack, revealing a dark, narrow shaft. A rickety ladder descended into the shadows, its rungs slick with moss. Poirot peered down, his lantern illuminating a stone floor some 10 feet below. "A cellar beneath a cellar," he murmured. "Most ingenious." He turned to the others. "I shall go first. Follow, but with caution." "Be careful, Poirot," Sir Harold said, his bluster softened by fear. "If she's hurt—" Poirot nodded, adjusting his grip on his cane, and began the descent. The ladder creaked under his weight, but he moved with the precision of a man accustomed to danger. At the bottom, he raised his lantern, its light spilling across a small, dank chamber. The walls were rough-hewn stone, the air cold and stale. In the centre lay a crumpled figure, Elellanena Grayson, her white bridal gown torn and streaked with mud, her veil missing. She was motionless, her breathing shallow. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot rushed to her side, kneeling to check her pulse. It fluttered weakly beneath his fingers. "She lives, but barely. Rupert, Sir Harold, come quickly!" The 2 men scrambled down, Rupert dropping to his knees beside Eleanor. "Ellie, oh God, what's happened to her?" He cradled her head, his voice breaking. Sir Harold's face crumpled. "My girl, Poirot, who did this?" Poirot's eyes darted around the chamber, cataloguing every detail. A small table held a cracked oil lamp, its flame long extinguished, and beside it a phonograph, identical to the one in Eleanor's study. A record spun silently on its turntable, its label scratched but legible. Eleanor's confession. Poirot's moustache twitched. "The bride's lost voice! It speaks again!" He wound the phonograph and set the needle. Eleanor's voice crackled to life, tremulous but clear. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. I found out about the money, the lies. He'll kill me to keep it quiet. The roses. Check the roses." The recording ended in a sharp gasp, then silence. Rupert's hands shook. She knew something. Who's he? Poirot rose, his mind racing. The recording from her study. It was a warning. This one, a testament. She left these to be found. He scanned the room again, spotting a pile of loose stones in the corner. Kneeling, he brushed them aside, revealing a small leather pouch. Inside were papers, financial documents signed by Sir Harold, detailing transfers of vast sums to an offshore account, marked with the initials L.A. L.A., Poirot murmured. Lord Ashwood, perhaps. He turned to Rupert. Monsieur, your family name, it begins with A, non? Rupert nodded, bewildered. "Yes, but I've no idea what this is." Sir Harold's face drained of colour. "Poirot, those are private. How did she found them?" Poirot cut in, his voice sharp. "And someone silenced her for it. But she is not dead. Not yet. We must get her to safety." With Rupert's help, they carried Eleanor up the ladder, her frail form limp in their arms. Beatrice and Thomas waited above, gasping as the bride emerged. "Call a doctor!" Sir Harold barked, his authority returning. "Now!" As the manor erupted into action, Poirot lingered by the trapdoor, the documents and recording in hand. The lavender scent, the roses, the money. They pointed to a conspiracy, but the killer's face remained veiled. "The bride speaks," he whispered, "but the final word is mine." Chapter 7. A Dance of Deception. The grand drawing-room of Ashwood Manor was a tableau of strained faces as Hercule Poirot re-entered, the leather pouch of documents tucked under his arm, and the phonograph, record in hand. Elellanena Grayson lay upstairs, tended by a hastily summoned doctor, her condition fragile but stable. The wedding guests, still clad in their finery, sat in uneasy silence, their eyes darting between Poirot and the family members who had returned from the cellar ordeal. The air crackled with anticipation and fear. Poirot placed the pouch and record on a mahogany table, his movements deliberate. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his voice cutting through the tension. "The little grey cells have danced a waltz of deception, and now the music slows. Mademoiselle Eleanor lives, but her vanishing was no accident. It was a performance, a masquerade to conceal a crime." Sir Harold Grayson, his face still ashen, rose from his chair. "Poirot, you found her, thank God. But what's this about a crime? Who did this to my niece?" Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, monsieur. The story, it unfolds in steps." He turned to the assembled group. "Let us rewind the clock to this morning, when the bride prepared for her day of joy." He paced, his cane tapping softly. Mademoiselle Eleanor was not merely nervous, as some believed. She was a woman who had uncovered a secret of money, of betrayal. The documents I hold prove it. Vast sums siphoned from the Graysons, fortune funneled to an account marked L.A. Lord Ashwood, perhaps. His gaze flicked to Rupert, who flinched. "I swear, Poirot," Rupert stammered, "I've no part in this. I love Eleanor. I'd never harm her." Poirot nodded. "Perhaps, monsieur, but the initials, they point to your family. And then there is the recording." He lifted the record from the cellar. Eleanor's voice, accusing he of lies, of intent to kill. She left it in that hidden chamber, knowing her life was at risk. Lady Margaret Ashwood, seated regally in her black velvet, spoke for the first time since the ordeal began. "This is preposterous, Monsieur Poirot. My son is no thief, no murderer. Eleanor must have been mistaken, or mad. Mad, madam." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No, she was perceptive. Let us consider the clues. The veil with its lavender scent, not her own perfume. The earring in the rose garden, the slipper in the cellar, the thread of silk on the study-sill. They are a trail, deliberate yet deceptive." He turned to Clara Grayson, who sat twisting her hands. "Mademoiselle Clara, you said Eleanor spoke of your uncle's generosity. Too generous, perhaps, because she discovered his dealings." Clara nodded, tears welling. She didn't tell me much, just that Uncle Harold had been reckless with the family money. I thought she meant the wedding costs. Sir Harold bristled. Reckless? I've built this family's wealth, not squandered it. Those documents, someone forged them. Poirot's moustache twitched. Forged, monsieur? Possible. But Eleanor believed them real, and someone acted to silence her. He paused, then addressed the room. Picture this. Eleanor confronts the culprit this morning. A quarrel ensues, heard by Madame Langston. She flees to her study, records her fears, then hides another message in the cellar, expecting to escape. But she is caught, drugged perhaps, and left below, alive to be dealt with later. Rupert's voice cracked. Drugged? Who would? Poirot cut in. The lavender, monsieur. It is not a perfume of chance. It is a clue. He turned to Beatrice Langston, who hovered near the door. Madam, you have been most helpful, yet I wonder. The lavender scent. It is yours, is it not? Beatrice paled, her hands clutching, her apron. Mine. I use lavender water, yes, but— And you were near the bride's room, Poirot pressed. You heard the quarrel. Did you see more? Beatrice faltered, then whispered, I saw someone leaving the study, in a hurry. But it was dark. I couldn't tell who. Poirot nodded. A shadow in the dance. We are close, mes amis. He faced the group, his voice rising. The killer believed Eleanor dead, or soon to be. The slipper, the earring, they were planted to mislead. But she lived, and her voice accuses. Tomorrow I gather you all again for the final step. The room erupted in murmurs as Poirot stepped back, his mind whirling. The lavender, the money, the lies. They twirled in a deceptive waltz, but one figure remained out of rhythm. The little grey cells, he murmured, they see the end. Chapter 8. The Killer's Mask Slips. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Ashwood Manor's drawing-room, casting a pale glow over the assembled guests. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his diminutive figure a pillar of resolve amid the nervous rustling of silk and satin. Elellanena Grayson remained upstairs, under the doctor's care, her survival a fragile thread in the tapestry of this mystery. The air was taut, every eye fixed on Poirot as he clasped his hands behind his back and began. Messieurs et mesdames, he said, his voice clear and commanding, the case of the vanishing bride reaches its crescendo. Mademoiselle, Eleanor did not flee from love or fear. She was taken, silenced, to protect a secret. Today, Hercule Poirot lifts the veil and reveals the killer. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Sir Harold Grayson gripped the arm of his chair, his knuckles white. Lord Rupert Ashwood stood by the fireplace, his face a mask of anguish. Lady Margaret Ashwood sat rigid, her icy composure unyielding. Clara Grayson clutched a handkerchief, while Mrs. Beatrice Langston lingered near the door, her eyes darting nervously. Poirot paced, his cane tapping a slow rhythm. Let us assemble the pieces. The note, the truth lies beyond the roses. Led us to the garden where an earring waited. The slipper in the cellar, the recording in the study, the documents of stolen wealth. All clues, some true, some false. But one thread binds them, the scent of lavender. He turned to Beatrice. Madame Langston, you admitted to using lavender water. It clung to the veil, the slipper, the cellar air. You were near the bride's room, heard the quarrel, yet you saw a shadow flee the study. Why did you not speak sooner? Beatrice stammered. I was afraid, Monsieur Poirot. I didn't know what it meant. Afraid, Poirot echoed, his gaze piercing. Or complicit? He waved a hand. Non, you are not the killer, but you know more than you say. He pivoted to Sir Harold. Monsieur Grayson, the documents bore your signature funneling wealth to L.A. You claimed forgery, yet Eleanor suspected you. Why? Sir Harold's voice trembled. She misunderstood. I've made investments, legal ones. Someone twisted the truth. Twisted indeed, Poirot said, then faced Rupert. Monsieur Ashwood, your quarrel with Eleanor. She doubted your fidelity, yet you swear innocence. The initials L.A., Lord Ashwood, point to you, or your house. Rupert's fists clenched. I'd never hurt her. I don't even manage the family accounts. Mother does. Poirot's eyes flicked to Lady Margaret, who stiffened. Madame, he said softly, you called Eleanor fragile, yet you approved the marriage. For Rupert's happiness, you said. But was it for happiness? Or profit? Lady Margaret's lips thinned. I've no need for Grayson money, Monsieur Poirot. This is absurd. Absurd? Poirot smiled faintly. Let us dance the final steps. He produced the leather pouch, spilling the documents onto the table. These papers? Expertly forged, yes, but by whom? And the recordings? Eleanor's voice, accusing he. Yet the cellar phonograph was placed after her fall, to ensure discovery. A killer's misstep. He paused, then whirled to Clara. Mademoiselle Grayson, you were closest to Eleanor. You dressed her, knew her fears. You said she stared out the window, waiting. For what? Or whom? Clara's tears spilled over. I don't know. She was my cousin. I loved her. Love, Poirot mused, or envy? He stepped back, addressing all. The truth is this. Eleanor uncovered a theft, not by Sir Harold, but against him. The forger used L.A. to implicate the Ashwoods, sowing discord. She confronted the culprit, who drugged her with lavender-scented chloroform. Your scent, Madame Langston, stolen to mislead, and hid her below, believing her dead. The clues were a frantic cover. He pointed suddenly at Lady Margaret. Madam Ashwood, you are the puppeteer. You forged the papers, siphoning wealth to fund your estate's debts. Eleanor found proof, perhaps in your letters. You quarrelled, you struck. The veil, the slipper, your attempts to frame Rupert or Sir Harold. Lady Margaret rose, her voice ice. Ridiculous! You've no evidence. Poirot held up a letter from the study pile, marked L. This, your handwriting, madame, matches the forger's, and Beatrice saw you flee the study. She feared your wrath. Beatrice nodded, sobbing. It was her I couldn't say. Lady Margaret's facade cracked, her eyes blazing. Eleanor threatened to ruin me. I only meant to stop her, not kill her. Rupert staggered back. Mother, no. Poirot's voice softened. The mask slips, madame. You danced too close to the edge. The room erupted as Sir Harold called for the police. Lady Margaret sank into her chair, defeated, as Poirot stepped aside, his work complete. The little grey cells, he murmured. They always find the rhythm. Chapter 9. The Veil Lifted. The drawing-room of Ashwood Manor was hushed, as the police escorted Lady Margaret Ashwood away, her regal bearing reduced to a brittle shell. The clink of handcuffs echoed faintly, a stark counterpoint to the wedding music that had filled the air just a day before. Hercule Poirot stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his moustache gleaming in the morning light. The guests, still reeling, watched him with a mix of awe and exhaustion, while upstairs Elellanena Grayson rested, her recovery a quiet triumph. Sir Harold Grayson approached Poirot, his voice gruff but grateful. "You've saved us, Poirot, my niece, my family's honour. I can't thank you enough." Poirot inclined his head. "It is the duty of the little grey cells, monsieur, to restore order where chaos reigns. But the tale, it is not quite finished." And Rupert Ashwood, pale and shaken, stepped forward. "What more is there, Poirot?" "My mother, she confessed. It's over, isn't it?" Poirot's green eyes twinkled. "Over, oui, but not complete. There is one final twist, a flourish to lift the veil entirely." He turned to the room, his voice rising. "Mes amis, Lady Margaret was the architect of this crime, but she did not act alone, not fully. The lavender, the recordings, the planted clues, they required a second hand." A murmur rippled through the guests. Clara Grayson clutched her handkerchief tighter, her eyes wide. "What do you mean, Monsieur Poirot?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Observe, the lavender scent on the veil. It was Madame Langton's, yes, but she did not apply it. The cellar phonograph, placed after Eleanor's fall. Lady Margaret was with us when it was found. Someone else ensured its discovery. And the note. The truth lies beyond the roses. Its script was not Eleanor's, nor Lady Margaret's." He paused, then pointed to Clara. "Mademoiselle Grayson, it was you." Clara gasped, her face draining of colour. "Me? That's insane. I'd never hurt Eleanor." "No, you did not hurt her," Poirot said gently. "You saved her, in your way. You knew of Lady Margaret's scheme, perhaps overheard her plans. You wrote the note, laced the veil with lavender from Beatrice's bottle, and placed the slipper and recording to guide us. You wanted Eleanor found, but feared accusing Lady Margaret directly." Clara's shoulders slumped, tears streaming. I did. Eleanor told me she suspected something. About the money, the Ashwoods. I saw Lady Margaret leave her room that morning, furious. When Eleanor vanished, I panicked. I thought she was dead. I left clues to point you to the garden, the cellar. I couldn't let her die down there. Rupert stared at her, stunned. You knew my mother was guilty, and said nothing. I was terrified, Clara sobbed. She's so powerful, I thought she'd ruin us all. Poirot raised a hand. Peace, mademoiselle. Your fear was your silence, but your actions spoke. You are no villain, merely a shadow in the dance. Sir Harold embraced Clara, his voice thick. You foolish girl! Why didn't you tell me? She protected you, monsieur, Poirot said, and in doing so, she ensured justice. He turned to the group, his tone final. Lady Margaret forged the documents, drugged Eleanor with stolen lavender chloroform, and hid her below, believing her dead. Clara, in her quiet courage, wove a trail to save her cousin. The veil hid a killer, but also a saviour. The room fell silent, the weight of truth settling. Poirot stepped to the window, gazing at the rose garden beyond. The roses, They held their secrets well, he murmured, but Hercule Poirot sees beyond. Later, as the police departed and the guests dispersed, Eleanor awoke, weak but lucid. Rupert sat by her bedside, his hand in hers, a vow renewed in silence. Downstairs, Poirot accepted a brandy from Sir Harold, his work done. "A 10 of 10, non?" he said with a small smile, sipping the drink. "Order is restored, and the little grey cells rest." Outside the sun climbed higher, and Ashwood Manor breathed again. A house unburdened, its veil lifted at last.